had to replace my chair. I'm getting my other chairs fixed up, and this one is, can you guys hear that? Guess I'll just have to sit very still. Hello, I am Ryan, and I live in Ecuador. And I've been living here for 2 years. I've traveled all around the country, and today I want to tell you some of the best places to travel in Ecuador, which is one of the best countries I've ever traveled to. It's just full of all kinds of amazing natural features. We've got the ocean, we've got the mountains, we've got the jungle. Because of the pandemic, we couldn't really leave Ecuador. We had trips planned to like Mexico, but we had to cancel those. We stayed in Ecuador for the full 2 years, but it was kind of a blessing because we got to see so much of the country. So here in this video, I'm gonna give you my top destinations in Ecuador. I've got a pretty big list here, so tie your bonnet up tight. We're gonna move fast. Let's do this.
People like this. Y'all don't know people like this. Y'all don't know people like this. Y'all don't know people like this.
All right, let's start with the capital, Quito. I live in Quito, so I know the city pretty well. I could talk about it for a whole video, I think I have. But we're just gonna go over some of the main attractions in the city. I think the Basilica de Voto Nacional, the Basilica, the big ass church basically in Quito, is a must-see. The interior is not anything to write home about, but you gotta climb up into the tower. There are actually 2 towers, and the climb up them is kind of thrilling. You have to go up these stairs, and it was a little scary actually, but the views up there are amazing. And you also have the most probably iconic view of Quito. That's where everybody takes the shot between the 2 towers, and you see the Panacea in the background. Quito's historical district was actually the 2nd place to be named by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. It's the biggest and best preserved old town in all of South America. You can spend hours just wandering around the old town, but make sure you go to the Plaza de Independencia, also known as the Plaza Grande. It's surrounded by some really cool buildings, including the Presidential Palace. And just west of that is the Plaza de San Francisco, which is, I believe, the biggest square in Quito. And the San Francisco Church is right there. It's really beautiful inside. It's not hard to get out of the city if you want to do some hiking while in Quito. Take the teleférico up to Mount Pichincha, and you go to a viewpoint. You can look out across the city. It's very beautiful. You gotta get your photo taken on the swing. It's kind of on the edge of a cliff. Well, at least it looks that way. And if you time it right, if you get the angle right, it just looks like you're swinging over the city. If you have time and you're in good shape, you can hike to the peak of Pichincha Mountain from there. It's about a 4-hour hike. You gotta go early in the morning because it does get foggy. It's hard to predict the weather there. So we actually tried to do it, and we had to turn around because it just got too foggy. On the backside of Pichincha, in the valley down there, is a place called Mindo. It's a small town, but it's one of the best places for bird watching in Ecuador. I think it's about a 2-hour, maybe like an hour to 2-hour drive from Quito. So we've been there a couple times just because it's such a nice, quiet, relaxing place. It's easy to get to. We would basically just go there, get a hostel with a balcony on our room, and just sit out on the balcony and just kind of watch the birds in the morning. In the afternoon, maybe do some hiking. There's a really cool cart thing on a wire that takes you across this valley to this area where you can hike. And there's like 8 waterfalls or something over there. Okay, let's head north of Quito, probably about a 2-hour drive to Otavalo. This place is a really cool little city. It is the home to the largest indigenous market in all of South America. On Saturdays, this thing just expands into the streets. It's the #1 place to buy a souvenir in Ecuador. You can get a Panama hat there. They were created in Ecuador. I got my llama wool sweater there and my hammock. Of course, you can get a poncho there. The square that the market is actually in is called the Plaza de los Ponchos. All kinds of textiles, jewelry, instruments, leather goods, all kinds of stuff there. Because of the large indigenous population, all these indigenous people coming to this market to sell their stuff, it's a great place to people watch. You can usually identify which indigenous group they're a part of based on their dress. So if you do a little bit of research ahead of time, it's kind of cool. You can like go, oh, that's an Otavalan, that's a Quechua, whatever. That's just a white guy trying to dress like the locals. Just outside of Otavalo, there are a couple of really amazing hikes. Lake Mojanda is a big, beautiful lake where you can hike up to the peak, Fuya Fuya. It's not a far hike, but it's a steep one for sure. It's difficult. You can also hike around the lake or hike to one of the other 2 lakes that are in the area, or just have a picnic lakeside and enjoy the cool breeze and beautiful scenery. About a 30-minute drive northwest of Otavalo is another lake called Cuyacocha. It's a crater lake, a lake inside of a collapsed volcano. We hiked around the entire thing, which took a few hours. It was somewhat difficult, but you can also take a boat into the lake or just have a meal at one of the restaurants that overlook it. Speaking of crater lakes, probably the best one in all of Ecuador is Quilotoa. It's about 4 hours south of Quito, and it's like one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. We actually did a 3-day hike from the lake down into the valley, down through these farming villages, just staying overnight in these hostels along the way, maybe hiking 4 hours a day. It was really beautiful, one of the best things we've ever done. If you want information about that, you can look up the Quilotoa Loop, and there's all kinds of stuff, information. I think I might actually have a blog post about it. But if you don't have time to do that, you can do shorter hikes around the entire lake, or even hike down into the caldera, down to the lake, and from there you can rent a kayak and take it out on the water. About halfway between Quito and Quilotoa is Cotopaxi, which is one of the largest active volcanoes in the world. Actually, you can, if I just walked over there and looked that way, I could see it. It's looking really beautiful today. It's just this picture-perfect volcano with a snowy peak. Of course, it's possible to climb it, but most people just do a day trip from Quito. It's only about an hour away. But I recommend staying in a hostel down by the park entrance. There's some really cool lodges down there. And then you can get there early and beat the crowds and also the clouds, because the clouds roll in the afternoon. You can't really see that much. I think for like 20 bucks, we hired a guide who drove us into the park to a lake. We hiked around the lake. She came with us and just gave us a ton of information. She answered all our questions. She was an experienced mountain climber who had like broken her leg on the side of a mountain once. And so she had all kinds of cool stories. And we just soaked in one of the most beautiful things the earth has created, really. About 1 hour east of Quito is this really cool mountain town. It's called Papillacta, and it's very famous, known for its hot springs. We stayed at the Termas de Papillacta Hotel, which is kind of a fancier place to stay there, but it was my birthday and Sarah treated me. We had this really beautiful room. We had a private hot spring, but if you're on a budget, there are public hot springs there. You can stay in a hostel for pretty cheap and then just go down to the public hot spring and pay a couple bucks to get in there. I really fell in love with the hot springs here in Ecuador. Just sitting in this natural hot water, has minerals in it, and surrounded by mountains and the brisk mountain air all around you. It's just such an incredible feeling. Let's jump over to another hot spring town. It's called Baños de Santa Agua, or commonly just known as Baños. I really fell in love with this small mountain town. It's in this valley by Tungurahua volcano. It's a really popular spot for tourists, for backpackers, people looking to do outdoor activities and extreme sports. There's a ton of hiking you can do in the mountains around the town, but you gotta check out Pabellón del Diablo, the Devil's Cauldron. I think it's the best waterfall I've ever visited. There are two entrances. One will take you down some stone steps close to the waterfall, and you can actually go in behind the waterfall, but you will get a little bit wet. The second entrance takes you across a suspension bridge, which is kind of freaky, but it gives you a great view of the falls and the actual cauldron, the area that the waterfall drains into, which is where the name the Devil's Cauldron comes from. There are a couple of public baths you can go to for just a few bucks in Baños. At night, when the temperature drops, head to the one in town called Termas de la Virgen, Thermals of the Virgin, named after the Virgin Mary, not your cousin Tim. Or for even more local experience, you can go to the Thermals of Salado. Both are great. The water's nice and toasty. They have a cool bath. You get in the hot and you jump in the cold, back in the hot. There are other hot springs in the town, ones that are a bit higher end. So I guess if you're concerned about hygiene, you might want to check those out. But I assure you, the thermals are drained and cleaned twice a day. They're clean. The only reason the waters look a little murky is because they're full of minerals. Moving on, let's head east from Baños over to the edge of the Amazon. There are a couple of cities or towns there that are fun to visit. Tena is a pretty nice city. It's a good jumping off point for our tours of the Amazon. Maybe 30 minutes down the road from that is Puerto Misahuayi, which is a little bit more jungly. You can hire a boat there that'll take you on a little tour down the river into the jungle. You can swim in the river there. There's some hiking, there's some waterfalls in the area. Those places have their own cool vibe and they're not too far from Quito. But if you want the true, real Amazon experience, make your way over to Lago Agrio, also known as Nueva Loja. It's like a 4 or 5 hour drive from Quito, but from there you can get a tour of the Cuyabeno Wildlife Reserve. It's a fully included tour, includes meals and accommodations and transportation. They take you 2 hours down the river to a lodge where you stay for 3 or 4 days, depending on what tour you take. And there's very limited electricity, there's no Wi-Fi, you're just in nature for all that time. This was one of my favorite trips we did in Ecuador. We spent a lot of time boating around, looking for wildlife. We canoed a little bit. We swam in this beautiful lake as the sun set. We did a night walk through the jungle. We saw all kinds of cool animals and birds, river dolphins, sea otters, sloths, monkeys. It was just really peaceful and relaxing and exciting, just a good combination, just a great trip. I just wanted to mention that most of the places that I'm mentioning I have solo videos about. So if you want to check the description below, you can find detailed videos about taking these trips, including Cuyabena. I go into the budget, how to do it, what we saw, just the itinerary, everything. Okay, let's get out of the jungle and back into the mountains and head to Riobamba. This is just kind of a typical Sierra city in Ecuador. There seems to be a younger population there. There's a nice old town. It has its own indigenous market that's less touristy and a lot smaller than the one in Otavalo. Riobamba is kind of famous for its hornado, its whole roasted pig. Definitely want to try that while you're there. There's some great hiking you can do on the outskirts of the city. It's also a great jumping off point if you want to visit the volcano Chimborazo. From Riobamba, straight south on the Pan American Highway, you'll reach Cuenca. Cuenca is a beautiful, beautiful city. A lot of expats retire there. There are a lot of Americans living there now. And for good reason. The weather, the scenery, it's just a beautiful place. I could really see myself living there. Lots of cool restaurants. The old town's really nice. It's clean and really green. We actually spent Christmas there last year, and we didn't really see too many tourist sites. I think we did the cathedral. There's a Panama Hat Museum. I got this hat there. But mostly we just hung out. And that's what that city's great for. Just hanging out, going for meals, going for walks. Just a great little city. Okay, we've done the jungle, the mountains. Let's head over to the coast. Ecuador has a 2,237 kilometer coastline. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get to the coast as much as we wanted to, but we did manage to go to Bahia de Carques and Canoa. Bahia is a small city on a peninsula. It's kind of built up a bit more. There are a lot of condos there, which is cool because you can get an Airbnb in a condo and just kind of experience what it's like to live on the coast in Ecuador. Get up in the morning, walk to the beach for a swim, head to the market, buy some seafood, grill it up for lunch, go out to a nice restaurant for dinner. I think we spent about 4 days there, and I just really liked it. It was a good combination of kind of modern amenities and the beach life. But if you want something a bit more beach vacation, I would go an hour north of Bahia to Canoa. You're going to find restaurants on the beach, really good food. I'd say the best food in Ecuador comes from this area. You're going to get ceviches, fish cooked in coconut milk, fried shrimp, fish stew, just a ton of great seafood dishes. There's a lot of places to stay that are beachside there. The town kind of has a bit of a hippie vibe to it, kind of a slow-paced lifestyle, but there's always a party somewhere. We spend most of our time just relaxing, eating, and swimming. The beaches in Ecuador are quite nice. They're clean, the sand's soft. They can be a little bit rough at times, but that also means you can surf. I really wish we had more time to do other beach towns in Ecuador. Some of the other options I heard good things about are Puerto Lopez, Montanita, and Mompiche. We had planned to do a trip along that coast, but we had to cancel it because of some of the COVID restrictions here. Okay, one last place to mention. What am I missing? The Galapagos. The Galapagos are probably one of the coolest places I've ever been. I don't really have to give you too many details about them. You know how great they are. We did a 3-day cruise and we did 3 days on mainland as well. So a total of 6 days there. The cruise is definitely worth it. I think for a 3-day cruise, you're gonna spend around $1,200, I would say minimum. But we saw so much wildlife. We snorkeled with sea lions and turtles. We watched the blue-footed boobies do their little mating dance thing. If you are planning a trip to the Galapagos, I highly recommend you check out my blog post or the video I shot. We go over all the details, our itinerary, we compare costs if you want to stay on the mainland or if you want to do a cruise. I'll tell you the cheapest way to do the Galapagos, just tons of details. I break down the entire budget. I keep track of every penny I spent there. So it's really great, it's detailed, and you can find that in the description below. Honestly, Ecuador is one of the best places to travel in the world. Probably the best country I've ever been to for hiking. An incredible mix of cultures, geography, and natural beauty. If you're watching this and the pandemic is still going on, then Ecuador is also one of the easier places to travel to. You just need either a negative COVID test or proof that you've been vaccinated. So if you're planning a trip to Ecuador, let me know in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out my playlist about traveling in Ecuador. I think most of the places I've mentioned are covered in there, individual videos giving you all the details and entertaining you and giving you this face to look at. So it's probably worth it. Actually, somebody said in my comments the other day, yesterday, that I look old, I look terrible and unhealthy. It's really been eating at me.
Prefer when I'm by myself. I don't wanna hang around y'all. Pray for good health. One day I'm gonna go ball. Fuck around and buy the whole mall. Breaking that cake. Flexing 700 in the bank. Not a superhero, I don't save. Look at my